Hi, this is Berrin from Ragic. I am going to be presenting our webinar today. Today is a low-key Ragic Office Hour webinar that has been around. I think we've been doing this for a year now, and we usually just answer questions according to the live chat. Now, I cannot really show you what you see on your screen right now, but it's basically you have the YouTube video, and on the right side there should be a live chat section. If your screen is smaller, then you have to scroll down a little bit, but it's still on the right side. So that should be where you will ask your questions from, and I will see it through here and then answer whatever you have in mind about Ragic. And I also received some emailed questions through Mel and Michelle, and you can always email us your questions. I will be answering these. There are a few questions over here that I'm going to be answering, but you don't really have to, hesitate, and you can ask your questions anytime you want, and I'll try answering them as we go. And again, like in the description, we will be answering your questions and building prototypes according to that. So please don't hesitate. You'll basically be collaborating with other users who have their questions as well, and that might be useful for others. This is kind of like a low-key chat, so that we can, do as much as you have in mind, and we will be creating some prototypes accordingly. And we have a few new features that older users who have been with us for a while might have questions about, so please don't hesitate to ask about them as well. Yesterday we announced a new feature that allows you to add new fields on a listing page, which is huge for us, and I hope it will be a lot more useful in the future. It's a little bit limited right now, as it does not allow some of the fields to be populated, but it's a great help when you're looking to do quick data entry for a few fields. So I do hope that is useful. If you have questions about that, I can answer them if I can. And if you have any questions about the topic last week about the automation, and if you have tried doing some task automation, please don't hesitate to let me know. I am really welcoming your feedback about previous webinars as well as this one, so please don't hesitate to let me know. Alright, we have a couple more minutes to start, but you can again start asking your questions immediately. I will get to them one by one. I will answer Mel's and Michelle's questions. Mel is asking about using test accounts to view how their user sees the database. The second question is if there is a way to view more than 25 records on the listing page. And in Mail and Merge for Word, is there a way to make it populate today's date? So I have answered her email already, and Michelle is asking that she's basically saying that she's concerned about having duplicate values and how to avoid having duplicate entries, or to check to see if there are duplicates created in her database. So those are both very valid questions, and I will get to that and talk a little bit about these topics, and we'll answer your questions as well. So please write your questions through the live chat on the right side of your screen. Again, if your screen is a little bit smaller, the live chat is going to be a little bit beneath your video, but it will still be on the right side. So let me actually kind of dress our database test database account up a little bit through here. I kind of like to do this before the webinars, but today we're still waiting for others to join, so let's do that now. So company settings, and I like to add a banner to my webinars. This one. That's not going to be a dark banner. And if you have questions about customizing your database, you're always welcome to ask me about those. I actually created a few banners on our knowledge base, so it should be available for you to download. And there are some patterns. There are some banners like this. If you want this banner, you'll have to ask me because I did not upload that, but I made it. So I think, right, I'll still send you the link about the banners because a lot of people ask me that. So let me just link that through the YouTube chat about the banners. For the people who are just joining, we are going to answer some questions that were asked through email, and then we're going to answer user questions. So if you have any questions about your database usage or general questions about your database or how to use this feature or that feature, we're going to build prototypes according to what you ask. So please don't hesitate to let me know if you have any questions. I mean, I'm going to answer some questions that were emailed by were sent by email, but I will also go ahead and answer questions through the live chat. If you don't see the live chat bar, I just wrote something there linking the custom banners to you guys. So it should be on the right side of your screen, or if you don't see that, it's right below the video on the right side. The title is live chat, and you have to be logged into YouTube in order to write anything. And well, I'll be here for an hour, so you have plenty of time to ask your questions. But it's better if you ask me things first, and then we can get to your question. All right, so I have a list of questions here that were emailed to me, and again, I have just done the introduction, but I will dive right in now. So Mel was asking if there is any way to have a test account to view the database as a user. So for those who are new to Ragic, there are plenty of access rights in Ragic. So when you configure an access right, it should either allow the user to view the database, or I'll actually show you a very simple sheet, and we'll have a look at where the access controls are. So I'm just gonna call this a contacts sheet, and then just add a couple fields so that there is something. Save. Alright, so basically, when I have a contact list, I might not want everyone to have a look at this sheet for users in my database. Now, when you add users to your database, it's basically having users in different user groups. So these are all the ones that are are created by default in Ragic, and this is the user group, the user one, that everyone is added automatically into. The other ones are just created by default in Ragic. It's just to categorize your users, and you can actually add your own user groups with names that make sense to you. Okay, so the way to add user groups is either through form settings, access rights, and then you can click add user group and then write a user group name and submit that. Or you can actually go to your account setup through the start tab. So start tab, account setup, and groups. Now, these are the system defaults, but again, you can add your own user groups, and again, it's a group name and group description. When you add new users, they're going to be added to the so basically, if you open the account, you're the system administrator, and you can change the design of your sheets and access every sheet, and do back-end work, while your users might not have the same rights. So basically, you can see the user groups. There can be multiple for each user, so you can have one person that's both in HR and management and user. So you can have a user in multiple groups. That does affect how they see their sheets. Basically, they will see the sheet with the user group that has the most access rights. All right, so if we go to change design and look at our user groups over here, you can see that there's a list of rights that every user can have. So this X user is the external user default group, so I'm not going to touch that. If you have questions about the external users, I always welcome that. For every other user group, it's basically no rights, survey user, viewer, bulletin user, and admin. So this might be a little bit confusing at first, but once you get used to the terms, you can understand how each user will see your sheet. So basically, survey user can create their own entries and edit their own entries. They won't be able to see anything else on your sheet. So for example, if I had a salesperson on my sales group and I set them to survey user, they will be able to add new contacts to this database sheet, but they won't be able to see what, for example, if John adds new users, he won't be able to see Jack's users that Jack added. So in some cases, this might be very useful. In some cases, if you want them to be able to see all other entries that other people have added, you can change them to a bulletin user. A viewer can view all entries. They cannot add or edit any entries. No rights means they cannot see that sheet at all. So they can't even see that sheet name under the tab. If they don't see any of the sheets under one tab, they can't see that tab. Pretty simple, eh? So for admin is not the same as system administrator. I get this question a lot. System administrator is whoever has opened the entry or has system as admin rights granted to them. So when you open an account in Ragic, you're by default the system administrator, and you can add users, you can access the database design like I am here in the contacts. Admin is an admin user right, so they can actually see all entries and view all entries, but they can't access this backend of the database sheet. So if we return to Mel's question about having a test account to view what the user sees, I recommend, because there is not something, it's not like a social media account where you can view as someone else. You will probably need to add a new user with an extra email account, or you can use a throwaway email account to log in. It's up to you. You can basically add a new user and then log in with their account and experiment with the access rights. But basically, it goes by what I just said regarding access rights. So it still needs to be an actual user account, but it doesn't have to be a real user on its own. You can experiment, especially when you're in the trial. You can experiment with as many different user test accounts as you want. Okay, the next question is viewing more than 25 records on the listing page. So right now I don't have any records on the listing page, but I'll add a couple to see how we view records over here. So if I added Sophia Hampton and then a new record saying Berrin Sun, and then another Amy, and then a new record. Okay, so basically I have tons of contacts, let's say, and you'll see that it's only displaying 4 of my entries now. I'll actually, I think I'll just open one of my other test accounts to show you this. So if I had tons of customers, okay, I don't have tons. I only have 36 over here, but here, if I wanted to, this is by default, so it usually shows 25 per page, and then you'll have to sift through the pages if you want to. But you can actually click on this 1 to 25 and then select anything you need to. But we don't really recommend you displaying more than 100 because that makes your listing page load a little bit slower. Another point in this is you could actually change what is being displayed on your listing page, as in the columns, because we actually have more fields on our form page, but we're choosing to display less on our listing page because that actually makes things easier to look at a glance. So your listing page is always, you can click into any of the entries to see the form and the details. But you can actually change what is being shown on the listing page. So if I clicked on change design through the listing page, just like I did now, you can see that these fields are not being displayed on my listing page while these are being displayed. So if I actually didn't want their phone, I can just remove that. So I just clicked on any of the field names and then just changed it to become not added to the listing page through the listing page field picker menu. So this menu, again, you can find it through the change design. Whenever you're on your listing page and you click change design, you'll go to the listing page form design. For newer users, we don't really do form design through the listing page. It's mostly for changing the field names. You can actually have different field names on your listing page, and that will not change the form design itself. So if I changed if I changed mobile to cell, it will display as cell in my listing page, but on my form page, it's gonna still say mobile. So some people like shortening the names on the listing page, especially when you have more columns. It's again up to you, but we usually do design changes from the form page, not the listing page. So bear that in mind when you're designing your applications. And there you go. So less fields is always better. And you can actually change the rows that are displayed per page, but I do not really recommend going above 100. And again, you can kind of configure which columns are being shown on the listing page with the method I just showed. I really stand by having less columns because it makes things easier to look at a glance, because you can always click into an entry to have a look at their entries. Their details on the form page with all your other fields. So it doesn't really make a lot of difference to show more on the listing page. It just makes the page way longer horizontally. And there's also this feature. I'm not sure if our users who have been with us for a while know about this yet, but you can actually configure which fields are being displayed on the left sidebar search tool now. So for our newer users, this is actually a filter type, so you can filter through for more than one field. So let's say that I was trying to find someone who has a cell phone signed with 301. I can search that contains 301. So I can search for that. But if I wanted to, filter by America and then Connecticut, then I can rate those in several fields. But I mean, this is way too long for me, so I can actually configure the filter sidebar. So if I didn't want to, display everything, then I can just remove them from here. So I'm selecting more than one. You can use Shift to select a range. You can also click with Control if you want to do several at once. I'm going to use Shift here and then save this. So you can see that this immediately looks neater and, well, more organized. So if you didn't want to display that many fields, you can configure that through the gear icon over here. If you want to add fields back, you can always do that as well. All right. So I hope that makes sense. Alright, so the next question is, in mail merge for Word, is there a way to make it populate today's date? So I explained that with a few tips in the email, but I will explain to our users who are here as well. So in the mail merge, so basically mail merge is what we have over here, tools, as an export option. Basically, in mail merge, I'm not sure how familiar everyone is here with what mail merge is, but basically you can actually have Ragic populate some values in your Excel or Word sheets with a template that you created in Excel or Word. So what that means is if I had a template in Word, let me just create one. So, no, I don't want to make that default. There you go. So, if I had something in Word saying, like, hello, let's say this is a letter. I basically have a few ways of creating that value over here. So I basically need to write these brackets and have my field name in between these brackets. So my field names are first name and last name. So I'm putting a space in between here. I don't know if you can see that. Let me zoom in. Okay. By the way, YouTube sometimes lags, but we're trying to make the best of it. Alright, so again, I'm typing the exact field name. If I had typed last name like this, which is not in my database, then our database is not gonna have that as the actual field value, and it will show up like this on your template. You don't want that, so make sure this is case sensitive, so make sure you're typing everything correctly. And again, I just mentioned that you can have different field names on the listing page. The one in our template is going to follow the form page. So, hello, first name, last name. Thank you for shopping with us. And of course, you can add a ton more fields if you have a ton more fields on your database design. So I'm going to save this as a docx file because that's what we have in our guide. So let's say thank you letter. And I'm going to save that. And what I'm going to do is I will upload that docx file over here on my mail merge configuration panel. So I'm going to create a template. The sample template is only Excel. It basically downloads your field template, and then you can configure that on Excel if you want to. It doesn't really matter where it comes from. Basically, you can create your own template. You can modify the template that is supplied over there. But we're uploading a new one. So let's say this is the thank you letter. And I'm going to upload that. Alright, so basically what the template does is it just provides you with a template. And when I download the mail merge through here, by clicking mail merge, and I want to have that in the webinar files actually on my desktop. There you go. Okay, save. So I'll open that. So you can see that it generated my sheet with the values that I had over there. So that's my mail merge for newer users. What Mel was asking if there is a way to make it populate today's date. So basically, I do not think that works with a lot of the fields, a lot of the sheet designs you might have in your database. For example, what I did just here might not fit with a contacts database because why would I need today's date on my contacts? But if I had something like members since, let's say shoppers since, and it was a date field that I was entering. For example, this can be defaulted to the date this contact was created. So I can do a default date, and then I'm not sure if I can populate that. Let's see. That's okay. I'll just enter it manually. So let's say I just went to that shop the first time on the 5th. And basically, I can have my template as, let's open our previous template. Okay. So if I had something like, thank you for shopping with us since, and then have the shopper since, we're really happy with your patronage. and are sending you a coupon for 30% off. So if I had something like this, it would make more sense. But if I wanted today's date and if it was an actual letter with the address and the letterhead, and you can actually modify this very well. By the way, for Word, it does not work for text boxes. So if you're adding a text box through the, I think it's here, or a word art, these, sorry, you know what I mean, this text box or word art. If you insert the field values with that, it might not work. So make sure that you're doing everything with a word formatting, with the formatting you want. Yeah, so that makes sense if you have an address on the shopper since. And well, Mel is asking, they have several of the same names, like Apple and then Apple One. Well, if your field names are the exact same, of course, I think it grabs the, if you had like 2 or 3 first name that had the exact same spelling. I'm talking about field names, by the way. I think it grabs the first one. So yeah, you probably need to have the field names a little bit different. I'm not sure if the mail merge has an option to actually grab the field ID instead of the field name, but I don't think so. Alright, so continuing with this is, so basically you can add a date. The date can be defaulted to today's date if that is applicable, and you can use that in the mail merge. But there's also a method. If you Google, yesterday I did Google for that, but basically you can make Word also have a special field on its own to refer to today's date. Whenever you open or edit that document, it will update with today's date. So I think that fits better in cases like this. If you want a date through your Ragic database, then sure, you can do that as well. It all depends on what you're trying to create. Okay? Okay, about Michelle's question, this question has a very long kind of answer, so I'll try to get into as many detail as I think of. But if you have like questions that branch off of this, then yeah, I think just let me know through the chat. And Mel is saying she uses it for letters, and yeah, that makes more sense. If you use it for letters like I did, I'm basically Word is mostly better for letters. You'll probably need to modify your field names, or if it makes sense to you. I mean, some people like numbering their field names, for example, 1 contact ID, 2 first name, and whatnot. But then it's a huge hassle if you want to put something as the 10th step when you have 35 fields, if you know what I mean. So it all depends on how you use your workflow. I think the best way is just to have different types of field names and have clearer field names. For example, it makes no sense if I have a name and then um, name, and I use one as first name, second as middle name, and everyone might get a little bit confused on what's going on. So make sure that if you're not the only user of your database, clearly label everything so that nobody gets confused. All right. Okay, so according to Michelle, she's trying to avoid duplicate entries. So, kind of, the short answer is you can actually prevent duplicates by making sure you check the unique box over here, especially for ID fields. For example, a contact ID might work for your company, or if you are making sure that no two emails are the same that are registered. For example, if I had an email field and I identify all my contacts with their email, then I would use, sorry, not this, use the unique field over here. So the unique setting is basically it will not let me save the same email twice. Let me show you an example. So if I wrote angie@ragic.com over here, it will save, right? But if I changed Amy's email to angie@ragic.com, then it's gonna show me a warning that says angie@ragic.com is already in the database and this will not save. You can see it's not saved right now, and I'll have to go in and change it or not save it and cancel. So if I changed it, I can still save the entry. So basically it prevents users from entering the same data twice. This is useful in, for example, if I wanted to add it to the first name, it wouldn't make any sense because there might be several Sophias. Even for the full name, I mean, Sophia Hampton, we can have 10 Sophia Hamptons as our contacts. So it doesn't really make sense to have it as unique because people have the same names. It happens all the time, even if you have a very unique name. So I always recommend to use a unique identifier for your database sheets, actually each one of them. So this is why in our examples, for example, in my very, branched off test database here, I have a products ID code for each product. And if I have my customers, each of my customers have their own customer ID, and my sales orders have their own sales order number. So you can see that they're all very defined in that sense because I'm really not very comfortable with having duplicates, and this helps me to control them. Any questions so far? Alright, so Michelle's question is a little bit deeper than that. She says that she won't be able to rely on ID keys for data coming from the outside. So if their data is submitted through web forms or Excel sheets, and let's say you were actually importing, you know, those the database kind of things about actual real life contacts, not like the ones I'm creating for test over here, but actual people. And they usually sell their emails, their phone numbers, and then their LinkedIn links or whatnot. And if you don't want to have multiples of those, then you probably need to um, define something that you don't want as a duplicate. So that is usually the email address. A lot of people argue with me and say that email addresses are sometimes shared. Yes, in some cases, but no in most cases. Not anymore. Maybe in retail, yeah, older couples like to, share an email address, but then they both want separate memberships or something, then yeah, in that case, you probably need to go by a unique identifier. But I absolutely do not recommend using a full name. I do not recommend that. Please don't do that. If you are using a full name, please, we have a way to generate a unique identifier for each field. So it's very easy. If you go to change design, for example, if I didn't have this contact ID, let me just delete that. And I'm just gonna add a new field called contact contact number. Okay, so if I select auto generate over here, and then you can select the formatting that's over here. You can add a prefix. I always like a prefix because it kind of helps me identify seeing everything. For example, on my sales order sheet on my example database over here, I can see the sales order number and the customer ID clearly, and the customer ID is actually linked to the sales order. The sales order is generated every time I create a new order, so that makes sense to me. Try to create what makes sense to you as an individual, or like what makes sense to your company. and you probably won't have many problems. So if I create a new field with the formatting for auto generate here, let's say I imported a large amount of data, and these are all going to be empty right now because I just created that field, but I can actually make Ragic populate this. So if I click populate empty values here, it will populate according to whatever sequence status it was in. So I didn't have any, so it's going to start from 1 and go 2, 3, 4. So basically, Sophia is number 4 now. So I can actually add that contact number on my listing page if I want to, and then save. So there you go. Ragic populated that for me. So Michelle is saying, if despite my best efforts, duplicates are created in the database, what tools can Ragic offer me to identify them quickly and rectify them? That's a very valid concern. So let's say if I actually accidentally set the current sequence to 4. Let's set that. And then someone just created a new contact, and now I will have 2 contacts with 4. So let's say John Smith, and then John at example. So let's save that, and then Ragic, because I did not set the unique value here, like I did before over here, now it's still saved, and Ragic thinks there are 2 number 4s. So if you have thousands of entries, that's a little bit hard to catch. But if you click on the arrow, so each field on your listing page has a little arrow next to the field name. It's on the right side of the field, so sometimes people associate this arrow not to be with the contact number but with the first name because they're so close together. But it's always on the right side. And you can see that when I hover on the arrow, this blue line underneath the field name is actually highlighting. It's actually extended until here, the edge of the arrow. So that's how you can have a look at that. So basically, this little arrow is for my contact number, and I can click total and summary, and you can see that there are 2 number 4s. So that is actually true for each type of field. So if I created another John, but this John is like John Delta, and then John D at example.com. So I can actually use total and summary and see that there are 2 Johns over here, which is totally normal. But on the contact number, I don't want the John, the 2 of my contacts, John and Sophia here, to be with the same contact number. So I can actually go in and fix that manually if I want to. If you have something like this and it's not the same entry and you need to merge it, then it's probably best to delete the one with less data. We don't really have a way to merge entries from within Ragic. You can do that with a data cleanup on Excel if you want to export your entries. It's easier. But from within here, and if I can clearly see that I have 2 different entries with the same ID, then I can go in and actually modify the entry. For example, in my case, I might just add a over here. So that's one method to ensure that these 2 are actually different entries. You can actually, again, export your entire database and then do a cleanup or merge some of the fields to see. I think there are some functions that allow you to merge the data that was entered last or something. So yeah, the quickest way, again, is to have a look at total and summary and show if there are any anomalies or anything. Right. So I hope that answers Michelle's question. She said she's gonna watch the recording because she can't attend today. And from our other users who are watching, do you have any questions that I can answer? Because again, I build prototypes according to your user questions and would really like to, you know, answer some interesting questions. So if you want to describe your company and what you do and what you use Ragic for and how you're trying to solve a certain problem, please write in the live chat now and I will get your question. So we have 25 more minutes, which is plenty of time to build one or two prototypes according to the complexity of your question. And again, please don't hesitate to let me know. In the meantime, I think I will describe our newest feature over here. So there is the quick add function now. If everyone has noticed yesterday's update, so we had a server update that added this new feature. So as you can see that it's not allowing me to do this quick add right now because it's disabled. It's saying there are fields with default values on the form page, not on the listing page. So what did I have as default? The shopper since field. So if I go to the listing page, it's gonna actually add that field. It's gonna actually let me add quick entries to my my listing page over here. So if I click on quick add, it will fill in the defaults by default and the auto generates will be auto generated on its own. So I can actually concentrate on rating whatever I need to. For example, let's say Gregory Thompson, and then save that. It will become a new entry. So if I wanted to add multiple entries, I can actually, let's say I have new contacts, 3 of them, and I can just add them by clicking this quick add button multiple times. And let's save. So as you can see, these entries just saved automatically. If I wanted to add their email, I could go in the form page. If I wanted to add the email through my listing page, then I can just add the email field on my listing page, which would make things faster. So this quick entry is quite useful in most cases, and well, it actually does keep a history. So you can see that I added the contact today um, through the timestamp over here. So it's pretty useful for quick data entry. If you were looking to edit an entry from the listing page, we already have that. If you go to tools and edit multiple entries, it goes to here where you can actually, edit values and save them. So you can edit them through the listing page, but there's a hotkey for that. So if you click E on your keyboard, it will do the same thing. All right. So I hope that is useful for the ones watching. And I'm still waiting for new questions. Anyone? By the way, I am taking suggestions for webinars in May. And next week on the 25th, we have an event management demo kind of webinar. So we're gonna build an event management database together on the 25th. So I do hope that is useful. I'm gonna try covering events and then people who sign up to the events and then or book events, and then checking guests in. But if you have any ideas on what to add, for example, that you can relate to, or I'm not sure if I should add the budget portion, but I might do that as well because it's an hour long again. So we're going to do that next week on the 25th. It's a Tuesday instead of Wednesday. For May, I have one request so far. So from our team, we actually created a way to import data from URL, so that allows you to actually choose a CSV or Excel file that is hosted online. And as that updates every day, Ragic checks its server to update your database in Ragic. I know this is a little complicated for newer users, but bear with me. So basically, if you're hosting a Google Sheet or whatever online, and then you have to pull the data from there that is being updated by other parties or whatnot, you can use import data from URL, and that will update your database entries accordingly if you keep your data in sync with the file. So each day when your server resets, Ragic will pull the data from the URL being hosted and then update your values. So that is very useful, especially if you want to, pull crowdsourced data, or if you are hosting something on a service such as Google Sheets. So the opposite of that is published to the web. And this is very useful for people who are trying to do reports. I've been asked this question a lot of times, so it's actually not very easy to create a lot of types of reports within Ragic. We have a lot of useful ones over here under the reports tab, and you can check them out. There's the dashboard, ranking, pivot table, very numeric things. There's the to-do list, which when you check an item off the list, it populates an empty date field, and then that is very useful for tasks. The label maker is basically it kind of puts your field values into labels that you can preset the sizes for, so it actually puts them very neatly into little rectangles. And if you have a lot of labels to print, for example for mailing or whatnot, it's very useful. For address mapping, that actually maps all the addresses on one database sheet onto Google Maps, so that's very useful as well. This is also very numeric, the line graph, and the calendar displays your values as events on the calendar. So these are all pretty useful in their own sense, but for data analytics, we only have the dashboard report and the line graph, which is sometimes not very enough for people. So I usually recommend using the Zapier synchronization, which works very well for a lot of people. Also, you can export your data by filtering them, and it's basically very useful if you work a lot with Excel dashboards or want to present with Excel to others. But publish to web is new, and I still haven't dived very much into it, but basically one example shows me that I can actually use the URL that comes from here and import it into Google Sheets and then create reports with Google Sheets. So that's going to be very useful. Michael is asking a related question. He is saying that he wants to build a report that has certain information from subtables. Is there a way to customize a report? So yes, basically, the best thing you can do, I'll just create, I'll create something from here. So basically, I have my customers on this sheet, and then I have products on another sheet, which is very basic. It just lists where it's made and the unit price and whatnot. But my sales order is actually using multiple products. So these are linked with link and load, which is a linking method. And it's also pulling my customer information from my customer sheet. So basically, this subtable is being pulled from my products, and this is being pulled from my customers. And if you want to build a report saying how many of what product was sold on which dates, and you basically need info from both the subtable over here and the date and other standalone fields on your sheet, right? So in that case, I would recommend going to change design, and through form tools, you can actually create a new sheet from subtable. So I already did that, but with product order rate, because I want a report on how many products are, created when, but we'll do this from the top. So let's create a new one. Sales order number, we'll link back to this sheet, and let's create that. So basically, you create a new sheet from all your entries in the subtable, and this just gives me a lump data of all the subtable entries in my sheet that we were just looking at. So if I actually wanted some more data from the parent sheet, I can actually click on the sheet name that was linked through. So what I clicked was form tools, link fields from parent sheets. So if there are multiple parents like I did here, in my case, some of these are actually multiple versions of the same sheet. So sales order and outgoing orders and sales orders foreign are all the same sheet, I think, with multiple versions. So it doesn't matter which one I choose. You can actually drag and drop some of the related fields into your new sheet. So basically, if I wanted to do a report and see when these were ordered and the amount total and the tax total, for example, whatnot, you can always add them in the sheet, and then you can generate a report from this huge sheet that has both the subtable and the parent sheet fields. So that's usually a good method. How do I move a record under a different tab, like a record under the current tab, but now want to move it to a new tab called Archive Files? So Mel, what you're asking for is, for example, if I wanted to only see the shipping date that was within these 1.5 years, then I will probably have a view for it. So if I wanted every order up till June 2016, as search for them, so I don't want to see them basically, I can create a new view for this. It can be shared for you if you have multiple users. It can be personal, but basically this can be archived, and then I can actually have another view that shows me everything that starts from this date, right? No, actually, I don't want that to. Does that help? No? Clear? Yeah, actually it does, because I don't have many entries from 2017 all in this test. So basically you can add different views. If you don't really want to see any of those, then you can actually remove that and create something that is within this year. We don't have any? Well, okay. Well, you can also use another status field. For example, if you have an archived yes or no selection, and then let's make it by default yes, and populate into values. And let me go. Sorry, didn't I click that? So default value, populate empty values. There, it's running. And exit. So everything is archived right now. And basically, let me just manually edit some of these to be not archived. Okay. So I can actually put a search over here and select no because I only wanted to see the active ones, right? And I'm searching for that, and I can save that as a view and make it a fixed filter. So you can actually, users cannot see the fixed filter or remove the fixed filter. I can only see this because I'm the system administrator. So basically they're kind of set to see all the non-archived ones, and whenever I change one of the status to yes, then it will disappear from my sheet. So what this does is you can actually have another version of the sheet with multiple versions. And for that, you can remove the fixed filter and it will show you all the entries. On my other sheet, I only see the non-archived entries. Does that make sense? So you can actually move that to another tab if you want to, but basically what you're doing is you're limiting what you can see on the sheet if you want to. Does that make sense? So it's not like moving the record per se, it's still there, but it's not displaying according to whatever criteria you have. I hope that makes sense, and if you have more questions about the views, I mean, you can, again, this is set through the left sidebar search tool, so you can have multiple fields as criteria, and then you can set your criteria as that. If you save as a personal view, you will be the only person who can click on the view's name and then see the sheet in that view. The shared view is shared among all users who have access to that sheet. And basically, it's very nice to collaborate with coworkers for that. For example, in our bug tracking tool that we're using internally in Ragic, we are using shared views, and basically I have views for bugs that were reported this week or this month, and then I can see all the ones that need to be announced to users and whatnot. Yeah, using filters are easier actually. And the fixed filter cannot be removed by regular users, and you're always defaulted to that view. If you're the system administrator, of course, you can remove it whenever you want to. Yeah, so using a saved view, just using the filter and then saving it as a view is the best method to what you're asking. All right, any other questions? Michael, I'm not sure if I was able to answer your question. So basically, if you create a new sheet from your subtable and then add the related parent fields from the parent sheet that you created the subtable from, it's the best way to see all the related fields on one sheet and then generate a report from that. So you can use the report tools, you can export your data, you can use the Zapier to link with another reporting tool if you want to. You can use publish to the web and export it to some other tool to analyze your data. So I hope that's helpful. I think I'm going to use a few graphing options in the upcoming webinar in May. Just to see how it's like, because we probably need to experiment more and see what it's like. Mel, I think if you're in the light, yeah, so basically we don't have a record limit unless you're in the free forever plan. So Ragic has several plans, and one is free. The free one, you can only have 3 sheets, and each sheet is limited to 1,000 entries each. But other than that, you don't have an entry limit if you're using the light account or the professional account. So records are not going to clog the system. You can have them archived. Basically, the only thing that will slow down your database is not the amount of entries, but if you're trying to display too many entries on your listing page, or if you're trying to display too many columns on your listing page, that will slow down your database a little bit. And if you're having trouble with that, you can remove some of the fields on as the columns, or you can display less entries per page. Sometimes some people report that they have trouble connecting to Ragic and it's slowing down a little bit. If that's the case, there's a troubleshooting you can go through, but that's very, very rare. And sometimes if your server has actions that are being done, we usually prevent them, but it happens like once a year or so that some people have a slowdown. But if that's so, report it right away and we'll look into it because we take that very seriously. Okay, Michael is saying that the YouTube kind of lagged on his end, but he has a meeting with me tomorrow and will ask further questions. Okay. If anyone else has questions about using, subtables and exporting your data. So basically, I'll repeat what I just said, Michael, again. Basically, you can create a new sheet from your subtable and then add your parent fields from the parent sheet to the new sheet that you are generating and create reports from the new sheet. So that way you can see all the subtable entries for each of your, so basically on my sales orders here, I have multiple products for each sales order that customers put in. And when I create a new sheet from this subtable, I will see all the ordered items in all sales orders. So that will make it easier to analyze what people had ordered and their rates. So where is that? Forgot what I named it. It's a sales information sheet. So if I went to my sales information sheet and actually remove that field fix filter, I can see there are multiple entries for example, peach jelly bean. And I can actually create a pivot table for this. I think it's very useful in that sense. So let's say product name and quantity. So I can see all the quantities ordered by the product name. As you can see, it's a little bit, this is not very a good analysis. Let's try another type of report. Let's try generating a line graph. So product name and quantity and monthly. So again, you can play around with this. Again, about the reports in Ragic, it always depends on what you're trying to create and analyze. So you can try experimenting with the data you have, or if you don't really like it, you can export your data, or you can use other tools and link to Ragic. So publish to the web is really useful. There's a formula that you can use on Google Sheets that I haven't really experimented with, but again, it's very, very new feature. So again, using the formula import URL is useful apparently in Google Sheets when this is published to the web. And I think publish to the web also requires you to, for some extent, make your data public, or like at least public limited way, in a limited way. But we'll have to look into that. It's basically best to, to make sure you know your access rights and who can view your data. And if you're setting your sheet to be public, it's usually from form settings, and everyone has viewer rights. And in some cases, you might not want to do that if your data is, you know, has to be protected, because viewer makes it public to anyone. All right. So I hope this was useful for everyone, and thank you all for your questions. I hope you have taken away some things that you needed from this webinar. That's all the time we have today, but if you have any extra questions, you can always write to me through berrin@ragic.com. That's my email. 2 R's Berrin, and then support@ragic.com is where I actually answer a little bit faster in most cases. Alright, so thank you all for joining and taking the time out to ask me questions. And if you have any extra questions, again, the email is right there in the live chat. Next week on the 25th, we're going to go through an event management database building webinar. And if you're interested in that kind of topic, please feel free to join as well. Next month, I will create one webinar about the publish to the web feature, and we're going to experiment with creating reports and graphs, hopefully. And if you have any questions or suggestions about that, please let me know, because I will be designing that webinar from scratch. So I haven't done this before. It's a new feature, and we're gonna do some experimentation and hopefully create good graphs and reports that make sense to your company in that sense. All right, thank you all for joining again. Have a great day, and again, please email if you have any further questions. Thank you. Bye.